All right, with those three stories, of course, we'll run by you some other stories as well in the course of the program. We want also to involve our panelists. Remember, today is Thursday, where we look at the state of economy, looking in the market, what is happening in the market as well. Allow me to introduce to you the board member of International Chamber of Commerce. That is Patrick Obath, who's here with us this morning. Also, we do have with us James Mureu, who is a vice chair of the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We do have with us as well Charles Kalomba, who is the Secretary General of Kenya National Federation of Jua Kali Association, also advisor to the Council of Governors. Also, we do have with us Governor Ndiritu, Muriithi, who is the governor of Laikipia, to give us a talk on, of course, the state of economy and what is happening in the country. Right, let's just begin with the first story where we saw the cost of unga as well. And we had our reporter Dan Mwangi reporting from Kulana Galalu. Right, we know since now the groundbreaking of that irrigation scheme, the results that it has yielded has not been, very satisfactory, really, as expected. So many people are wondering what truly went down with Kulana Galalu project itself. So, from that point of view, when we know also the unga subsidy has been now thwarted since December, at the beginning of January, the cost of unga is spiking and going up, and people now are complaining. Let's begin with you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Debarl. I must first of all be completely open. I sit on the board of a company that is milling unga in this country. So, but let us begin to understand the dynamics.
So you're the people who are benefiting, the millers?
The millers are not benefiting. Some are benefiting, some are not.
That is what the CS is saying. The millers are the people actually who are benefiting from this.
I think we have to really be transparent in terms of saying it should be at 115 or it should be at 190 or it should be at 90 shillings. What has to come out clearly every time we talk is the cost build-up to the 115 shillings that is expected. And if you look through the various elements that goes into the cost of milling, the first cost is basically the availability of good raw material. Mm-hmm. Now, every miller sources their raw material from a particular place, and they all have their different costs in terms of basic raw material. When you talk about what is available in the silos that the government holds and so forth, a lot of that is normally kept as strategic stock for the country.
Yes.
Then most millers then buy on the market, right? And unfortunately, truth to be in our country, we have a lot of people who become middlemen in this process. Mm-hmm. So by the time you've actually managed to get to a stock of unga, it's probably passed between 2 and 3 people. So that brings up the cost. Although the farmer is paid a certain cost, by the time the miller buys it, it's reached a certain price. So the efficient people will actually go and try and cut out the middlemen. Knowing in this country, that becomes a tough thing.
Yes.
Right? What millers do a lot of times is to try and import as well as balance with local material. Mm-hmm. And that then gives you a reasonable price. And I think every miller is trying to optimize in terms of the cost of raw material.
Yes.
In terms of then, once you see the raw material and then you move up to the actual cost of the unga, a lot of things there are in there as well. But first of all is how good is the material you bring out based on the technology that you have. So if I invest in technology that brings out the best, I expect to get a good premium. Mm-hmm. as a person. And then also you have specialized types of unga. There are premium ungas and there are sort of ordinary ungas, for want of a better word. And just like in bread, when you buy bread, you can buy bread at different prices, depending on the way the bread has been prepared. Unga is exactly the same. So I would say that the price of unga will vary from 110 shillings all the way to 190 shillings. And you just have to pick the bit that you're going to chew.
Right. Yeah, Kulana Galalu, I wanted you to comment on it.
I think Kulana Galalu is actually, if the government can pull it off, would be a great idea in terms of being able to stabilize the cost of input. Because what we don't have is we don't have a big enough producer to be able to sort of take out the variations in stocks of maize that there are in the country. So the faster it comes onto stream, the better. Mm-hmm. But obviously there are challenges in that part of that part of the world. First of all, I think the scale of that project, given the availability and the ability to extract water from that area, I think is the biggest challenge that sits at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I think it will take time until the whole, the sort of the balance between what is acceptable in terms of water extraction, what comes down the Tana River and so forth is there. So we pray that the government is able to pull it off, but for most of us, it is one of these things that is going to take another 5 years or so before it actually fully comes through. So let's hold our horses. I think the reality is that we will have to balance the input material between what is available locally, what can be imported from Uganda and Tanzania, which is where the first port of call is, and then what can be imported from Mexico, which is where we go to.
Right. Governor, from you, Ndiritu Muriithi, don't you think that the price of unga, especially in this country, given what farmers actually are buying and you know what is actually out there in the market right now, it is very expensive. It has been tapped to be very expensive in Africa. Why should we be selling our unga very expensively? And first of all, we know unga has been a staple food for this country for a long time. And is it a matter of policy, or what is actually the problem that is actually putting so much premium on this price?
Well, I don't know that much has changed, Debarl. We generally are a high-cost producer of grains, most, you know, whether be it maize or wheat. And you know, historically, we have imported these cereals at a duty. Wheat used to be 60%. And that goes back to the colonial production regime that protected the white farmer who grew these cereals. And I think that that commercial policy has never really been, shall I say, updated significantly. So I think, as Patrick was saying, we do have to consider bringing grains from much lower cost producers. I also think that the food basket is skewed. Our focus on maize as the only crop leaves out many crops which we are better at growing. Millets and sorghums. If you look on the vegetable side, things like managu and other crops that we grow and are very competitive without even trying. Yet the focus is still on exotic things like kales and spinach and so on. So I think that the effort of government also ought to look at improving what is on the food basket, so that we are not just focused on maize. And finally, if you look at other traditional, should I say, sweet potatoes and narrow roots and things like that, and cassavas, things that we are really good at growing, yet we are not focusing on them as a main source of starch and protein. On the Garana project, I agree. I mean, one of the big questions has always been, you know, can we really go to 1 million acres unless we have built the high Grand Falls, which was supposed to be, if you will, the main source of water for irrigation. So, and even if we start with the smaller dams in that ecosystem, we are still some distance from getting those dams up and running. So I think we will stay at pilot until we've been able to build the dams that are necessary to provide the water.
4 years down the line, we're still staying at pilot. Yeah, since 2014.
Look, Debarl, as I've said on your show before, sometimes public sector projects, but I think even private sector projects sometimes take a very long time to realize. You know, the story is told of the Eurotunnel, you know, the tunnel connecting mainland Europe to the UK. The first time a contractor went to site was during the time of Napoleon Bonaparte. So sometimes projects, you know, I certainly wish that as public sector, we are able to turn around projects and move faster, but it's not always the case.
All right. Okay, let's hear from Mureu. Good morning.
Morning, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, well, I want to probably take off from a different trajectory and say this. If you look at the model of Galana, they started, the whole thing was premised on the wrong understanding of large-scale farming. And I know for a fact that the Israelis who are trying, who did the 10,000 acres, cannot actually, to be honest, understand what large-scale farming is all about. Israelis understand intensive farming. And so you find, for me, that is where the problem started. That they do not, if you look at countries that do large-scale farming, countries like Australia or America or Netherlands, those are countries that have the understanding. They know how to deal with large-scale farming. But if you find, I mean, I am doing some farming just south of that 1 million acres. We have extracted water. We are doing farming there. So it is a question of how you allow the private sector also to play their role. You see, there's too much government in this 1.5 million acres. And if you look at the people who allocated this land, they are all politicians, unfortunately, and they are not farmers. So we must get the formula right. Give it to practitioners, people who will be interested enough to produce maize or to produce whatever it is. But for a long time, we are like the architect, the proverbial architect who sits and draws a house forever on paper. Go out there and build brick mortar and put up the house. For us, the land is divided, it's allocated to people who are not practitioners, and that is a fact. You can find out who was allocated and how much land was allocated and whether they have even been there to see the land. So we must get the formula right. We must give it to practicing farmers who are interested in growing the products that the government has set out. 1.5 million acres is big enough to feed this nation. But we are not getting that formula right. Then you also find the cost of raw materials, I mean the inputs into that production, yes. Cost of fuel. If you get that maize, even if you got that 1 million acres farmed, ferrying that maize from Kulalu to the millers or wherever is again a tall order. Mm-hmm. What about the possibility of getting mobile millers that mail at the gate and produce unga and package it there? They should allow the private sector to help them. The government does not, and I'm sorry to say, they do not understand that scale of farming. They should allocate farmers who are practicing. We will bring in mobile warehouses silos that can be brought in situ. The maize is stored there. It's milled and packaged in situ. But
I thought the government has been calling for private sector participation.
We have. Ndiritu, I can tell you, people have applied, but only those who know where to go will get allocated. I have leased land just south of this 1.5 million acres. I'm paying for leased land. I wish I can be allocated 100,000
So this is under the PPP?
I mean, it's not.
Yes, from the get-go, government and its partner from the Israeli were doing the pilots, whatever, and called for private sector to express their interest and to take up parcels to do.
They have all been allocated to somebody who doesn't appear there. I can tell you that for a fact. Find out.
So people are gaming in the system right now?
Yes, people have the usual practice. People go there, they want to be allocated land, but they're not farming.
Thank you. Let's hear from Charles Kalomba. Actually, it's just freshly from the coast as well.
Yes, Debarl, this show is very important for me because when you called me, I was in Kwale. We are doing a program which you have really highlighted. Thank you because of what you have done. NTV has really shown the whole world. In fact, yesterday we were talking to the people who are financing it, and they're saying the whole world is clapping, and they're saying this is the project for Africa, not just for Kenya. Mm-hmm. So when you told me to come, I missed air because I booked in late, and I said I will drive, and I drove to Nairobi. Personally.
Thank you.
Mureu, I was in your county. So to me, I think we are not serious as a country, even as Mheshimiwa here. I worked with him for many, many years.
Can you say that I'm not serious?
Governor. Yeah, as a country we are not serious. And Yesterday I was I was teaching a team in Mombasa, and I told them we are lucky that the Noah's Ark landed in Kenya, on Mount Kenya. That's why we have all animals, and other countries miss the animals. And Mheshimiwa Governor now is looking at me. You will find out. I will tell you, because the Noah's Ark landed in Kenya.
I thought it landed in Ethiopia.
No, it landed in Kenya. Ethiopia does not have as many animals as we have. Even we have been lending animals to the east. You remember when President Kibaki was donating some animals because there are too many. and of course, I was telling people yesterday in a meeting that it's very surprising that our animals behave like us. You go to Gilgil and Naivasha, you find monkeys on the road stoning people. You go to the park here, you find elephants chasing people. And yet in India, elephants are working, pulling handcarts, plowing the land. And in Kenyan elephants, they are chasing people to strangle them. Kenyan lions, they eat people. Any other lion in the world does not eat people. Monkeys here, they are stoning people. Monkeys in Asia, they are doing work. They are even lawn mowing. They have a lawn mower. They are doing a lawn mowing in your field. They are taking care of the animals in the field. Yet monkeys in Kenya, they are chasing people. So you see, we are behaving more or less the same like our animals. The
Perhaps
problem,
they are behaving like us.
Who changed who? Is it the animals or us? That's what I want to know. Who changed who? Now, Gulalu, you know, I normally call it Gulalu. And I told Patrick here that I asked some lawyers who know what is the meaning of Gulalu. And they told me Gulalu is a very big madman. The biggest madman is called Gulalu. Now, this Gulalu, and then I was wondering now, even the Minister for Water is a lawyer. Does he understand what is the meaning of Gulalu? Gulalu is a madman, and a big one. So this system they are doing in Gulalu will not yield results. The only thing they would have done, they would have said, whatever is available now, we do wet milling. Wet milling is a process. Mureu, what you are saying about milling in the gate? In situ.
Yes.
Is good, yes. But it have a lot of waste and a lot of aflatoxin. But if we do wet milling, we have enough starch for Africa. Just Galana only. So what I know is, irrigation is very good, because 50 years after independence, Kenyans have been using rain, and yet rain came as a punishment. So we have been punishing ourselves because we are using rain, which came to punish the generation of Noah. So you see, it has been a mismatch. Now, the irrigation system was good. In 2007, Debarl, there was what we call El Nino. Eastern region, they had a bumper harvest. Nobody remembered what is happening, because there was a lot of rain, like a punishment to them, and they had a bumper harvest. So we could have taken it from there, we could be having enough food today. And then in the last show, I said, we have not defined food. Every Kenyan is looking at maize as food. There is a lot of variety for food. So we need to define food and say, if we are lacking food, what are we lacking? Is it maize from Garana Gulalu? Because even our silos, I have a program that I was doing with the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Industry. Our silos are loaded with cereals which cannot be disposed, and they have aflatoxin. Now, are you telling me now that when we take it to the millers, because even millers have been smuggling, Patrick, millers have been smuggling that aflatoxin cereals into their milling to mill either for animal feeds, because when you give to animal feeds, when you give to animals, they multiply the aflatoxin in their body. When you eat the meat, you get it 3 times. So that's the danger of this country. So what we need to do is to define, is it very expensive for us to pipe water from Lake Victoria to Eastern region? Because we have piped oil from Mombasa to Kisumu. Is it very expensive? And then you see, even the person who was designing that system would have done a triple conduit, whereby water is passing here, and oil is passing here, and gas is passing here, in the same pipeline. So what I'm saying is that we are not serious, and Mheshimiwa, we are one of us who is not serious. I will tell you for a fact. We have been talking and talking and talking, and we are standing in the same place. Standing in the same place. Virtually standing in the same place. And this country, even unga now today, we are importing unga. Forget about even the cost going up. We are importing unga now for this country because we have deficiency. So what are we going to do? What we need to do is that, and I'm happy that the president is now appointing leaders who will be ministers in his government. Let me tell you, he's a worried man, because he doesn't know whether he's doing it right or whether he's doing it wrong, whether he's going to get a bad cake than he got last time. Because you appoint people who go to deals. They are there waiting for unga. Thank you. And they are doing deals. Right. So what the president is doing today, he just needs to read the Bible. How did Moses do it? How did David do it? There are people who have done it in the Bible. Let him read the Bible. Let him study the Bible and see what God says. Joseph became a prime minister without going to school.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from
I think there's, I think something you've just made a point, Kalomba, about the quality of maize. I think the other thing that is not coming out that is true is that almost 60% of the maize growing area in Kenya is aflatoxin. Is infected with aflatoxin. So when you say you're producing so much maize, only 40% is fit for human consumption.
Correct.
The rest cannot actually be milled.
Even for animals, no?
Right. So, the issue of saying that there's enough maize in the country, in terms of the number of grains, yes, but the number of suitable grain, the answer is no.
No.
And that area that is aflatoxin infected is actually increasing. So, the Kulalu project is actually quite important because that area does not have aflatoxin. And if that can be developed, then we'll have real maize that you can talk about to be milled.
But previously, we've seen there been a deliberate attempt to import some of this maize. Some of the leaders, they know very well these are maize which are actually aflatoxin infected maize.
Yeah.
Just deliberately in the country because they wanted just to make a big gain out of it, profiteering out of it. So this is regardless. This is regardless of being aware that also the health of the public is at stake as well.
Do they care?
That is irresponsible leadership.
Yes.
Can I just say?
Yeah, let's say from where.
You know that is the one big thing that hurts this country, profiteering. Somebody will be given a responsibility, and I agree with you. The president is pulling all his hair out because who is he going to trust with this big responsibility? And who is not going to be infected with that disease that sits in that office? Every holder of this office, one time or the other, the agriculture docket has always been dogged with these food shortages. Maybe time has come, Debarl, for us to have a Marshall Plan to turn that Kulalu into a real farm that is going to produce the maize that this country needs. But having said that, I want to agree with Governor Ndiritu. Can we stop focusing too much on maize? I've been to Western Australia, Western Sudan, Uganda and Sudan. They never talk about maize. They talk about the tubers. They make their ugali from cassava, unga, millet and all that.
Next, yeah.
But we are so focused on ugali that we lose sight of the big picture. So maybe time has come for us to look at what are the alternatives. Because for a long time we just think about maize, and it has become such an emotive issue. Everybody thinks if you don't have maize, let's import maize. Must we use our foreign currency to import maize when we can grow it here? I have taken a decision to grow all my maize. Everything I'll consume, I'll grow it in my small shamba, and I'll be okay. I don't need the unga out there.
Do we want food security or maize security?
It looks like it's maize security. Secure. Bring as much maize as you can, with or without aflatoxin.
Now, I mean, of course, my friend Kalomba changed me. You know, when I was in national government, and we were, because I tell you, we are far better at growing sorghums and millets and cassavas and sweet potatoes and managu and stinging nettle. I mean, a whole range of crops that frankly are better, even from a protein content, from a nutritional content. You know, but ultimately the crop, I mean the program in the Ministry of Agriculture will end up being called orphan crops, perhaps betraying our fascination with this Delamere maize and wheat. But I think that the solution to food security is not going to be found just in maize. And it's fine to promote maize, but I think that there is such a vast opportunity for other crops. And mind you, sorghums, millets, doricos, and things like that, far higher income to the farmer per area. They require far less moisture. So like doricos, for example, and sorghums and millets, the areas that we used to call semi-arid and so on, that is where they do well.
They're drought resistant actually.
So I think that the food security answer is in very large measure in terms of other crops, not just the question of maize. And on the question of wheat, I frankly think we are completely misguided to continue using an import regime, a sort of import duty regime to protect, the 2 or 3 of us who grow wheat.
But Governor, there's a remedy, but I think our ears are closed to the remedy. You see, in Kenya, I have gone to 47 counties, including your county. I did a survey of your county.
And you are welcome again.
Yes, and maybe I will come.
Now that I'm in charge, come again.
Yes. Now, I discovered all the farmers don't understand what they are planting. They don't understand their soils. They don't understand post-harvest handling. They don't understand even today in Kenya, we are beating maize in the name of shelling. You put maize in a sack and take a stick and beat maize very well. And then you say you are shelling. When shelling technology is very simple, making a simple machine, which Juakalis are making, and then you shell your maize. You get it? So you see the problem is that there is a mismatch between the national government, between the county government. There is no relationship. That's why we are suffering, because the national government does not want to see what the county government is doing. County government does not want to recognize what the national government is doing. So there is that war fast. People fighting. And we waste a lot of time fighting because we are looking for money. People are saying, where is our money? And then when you give them the money, they don't know what to do with the money. That's the problem. So what we want to do is, like what we are doing in Kwale, to harmonize the whole process, so that from the county system to the national system to the public system to the private system, everybody begin to think the same. So that when you look at your soil, if maize can do well in that soil, you grow maize. If it doesn't, you activate the soil with some inputs, and then you have the better soil for your maize. So the yields, other than just the water, we are talking about what is the fertility of the ground before you think about water. If we get that right, and then how do we now harvest our maize? Because many farmers, they go and harvest when the rain is coming. They look up, rain is coming, they hurry. They go and harvest. They grow humidity. Humidity levels rise in the maize. So it begins to mold for aflatoxin. They go and keep in the store. And then the danger is they eat it. Then we don't have granaries. Today in Kwale we are doing stainless silos for communities. You'll see in a few years. You know the program. In a few years you'll see.
But I think let's look at our neighbor Uganda. They have been very successful, and I say this with pride because we have supported a program in one of the organizations I sit on of trying to get the person at the lowest level to understand what their responsibility is in terms of the quality of produce that comes out of that farm. But over and above that, their county governments, the equivalent of the county governments, have actually taken on board
The districts.
The districts. They've actually taken on board legislating within that district how they're going to manage the quality of maize. So it's actually grown in such a way that the farmers look after over each other's shoulders to ensure that they produce good quality. Because if you start bringing aflatoxin to this area, the whole area will be affected. So they actually work as individual farmers with the county government to ensure that what has been enacted is actually seen on the ground. So when you find that Ugandan maize is cheaper coming into Kenya, it's because they've got such an efficient production system that the cost to market is actually much lower, right? And even talking about simple technology, if you find where they used to shell the maize, it's a very simple thing made by the Juakali people locally. And it's just something they put on the maize and they turn it around like this and it's done, right? And that, when I saw that thing, I said, why can't we have this thing in Kenya? So I think over and above talking about these big national projects and everything else, at the county level, part of what the MCAs can do, and Governor, this is something I'm speaking because you're here, you can actually take a whole quality system, implement it within the county, and begin to become productive. It will do two things. One, it will lower the cost to market. Secondly, there is an aspect of Vision 2030, which you talked about, this market economy and whatever it is, where you're going to have wholesale and retail. And that recognizes that there's different parts of the country that are good at growing different things. And the idea was that you'd bring quantity in one place, bring it to the wholesale, send it to another county, and then it is retailed in that area. So if the Kisii is good in bananas, they do that and bring it to another part of the country, right? If if Nyandarua is good with with sorghum, they do it there and then it's brought out. And that way you get the best production area, you bring it at good cost, and then you take it to other parts of the country. Then you actually have this diversity of nutrition.
Practically, it can happen.
Thank you.
It can.
Yeah, let's say from Mureu, before we take a short break, because what you're saying also, I needed to know, from the National Strategic Grain Reserve as well, is the maize stored there also infected or supposed to be Do we really know?
Debarl, that is a $1 million question. I would never answer that.
I'll answer. Solution.
Yeah. But let me just comment on what Patrick has just said.
Yes, please.
I wouldn't tell you about that. I'm not authoritative enough to comment. But I want to just agree
But
with
given that
what
it's coming from the farmers and hearing what Kalomba is telling us here, even if the shelling itself, it's a no-brainer.
I can't swear that it is not infected, but that is story for another day from me. I want to just agree with Patrick in terms of looking at areas where you have competitive edge over the others. Maybe even the counties, and governor is here. Maybe through the Council of Governors, counties can start talking to each other and see how you can have intra-county trade that will allow you to produce wheat, for example, in Laikipia, and share it out or bring it out in the market, as he has said. And don't start struggling to grow maize when that soil cannot take maize, or bananas when the soil cannot take bananas. And maybe one of the big responsibilities that the county governments can also do is assist the farmers with soil testing, because they are equipment that are expensive. Bring them out here, test the soil, and tell somebody, your soil can grow X, Y, Z. Your soil can grow A, B, C, D. That way, then you have guided them. Now and then, the extension officers who are supposed to have been there for a long time should then follow through and make sure that this happens on the ground. And then encourage intra-county trade. We've talked about this with the Council of Governors, but it seems like everybody's operating in a silo.
Right.
Let me just say this.
We need to take a short break. We need to just hold on a minute. We take a short break, then we come back. Of course, we shall pick up with you.
Say to my colleagues here that counties are trading with one another. I think that's a fact. And the Council of Governors, as governors, I'm quite certain we are alive to the opportunities that collaboration and cooperation for example, in my own neck of the woods, Maya Triangle Initiative is Laikipia, Isiolo, Samburu, Baringo. A very detailed program of work, including how we are modernizing livestock, how we are approaching marketing for livestock products, how we are enhancing security in that part of Kenya, how we are looking at water, planning together, developing water sources together, and bulk water storage and so on. So counties, I want to convince Charles here, are working together. I mean, of course, I personally take the view that a good thing can always be bettered. So if Charles has some good ideas about how to build SMEs, for example, which was our area of expertise with him the last I found him, I welcome them. Mureu spoke to the question of testing soils and what are we doing to support farmers, and I'm happy to report here that at the end of this month, Laikipia itself will be publishing a crop map, because we've been testing soils and seeing what can grow where. And I want to tell you also that part of our program, a major part of our program, is in fact to help farmers grow those things that they can be competitive in, and to reduce this over-reliance on maize. And then I'm happy that our farmers are responding very, very positively. Crops that historically were never considered cash crops. As I mentioned here, a particular vegetable called managu in those parts. Very, very popular now, and farmers are taking it. Doricos. Also, our approach is one of contract farming. So we want the farmer to already know where her market is. And so you've seen us very strongly on the question of contract farming for canola, for sorghums, and other different crops, where we bring companies that are looking for this product to come and sign off contracts with farmers, so that the farmer already knows what her income her expected income is. So that's the way we are approaching it. But finally, I want to say to Charles and Mureu, look, I have a temperament that the grass is not half empty, it is half full. So in spite of the things that you see have been wrong with this country is moving forward fairly steadily. And I think that the experiment of devolution is by far the boldest experiment anybody is doing on this continent in terms of bringing decision making to where it matters and people taking charge of their lives.
Thank you.
And we stop complaining that we are being marginalized by others. Yeah?
But Debarl, I will differ with the Mheshimiwa. Just give me 1 minute to differ with him, because you see, there is something very interesting that's coming from him.
Yes.
I've worked with him for many years in the Ministry of Industry.
Yes.
Many years, you can't believe it. And we have done so many projects in the country that have seen the light of the day only a quarter, then they vanished. Now, a prisoner, when he goes to prison, he tells his wife, I'm going to prison. A prison warder, when he tells his wife, I'm going to work, he tells, I'm going to prison. Who is in prison? They are both in prison. So the problem of this country is that everybody is in prison, but some are in prison with different...
More than others.
More than others. So we want to agree that this country is suffering. This country is suffering in the sense that, and I was telling my team before when you are away, that why we are suffering is that every ministry and all these CS the president is going to choose now, they are going to be like presidents. Then every ministry is like a government. So there is no synergy, number one. The Minister of Industry does not know what the Minister of Agriculture has. The Minister of Energy does not know what to do with the Minister of Energy or Industry. So we need to persuade the whole country to harmonize and begin to think the same. The soil testing system, I started in Busia County. And the farmers, we went to scoop every ground of every farmer in every corner and test. Because farmers put fertilizer and they toxify the soil without knowing.
Since you are given 3 minutes, donate one to me.
Yes.
to try and change your
Yes,
mind. Look,
yeah.
since we were trying to get the MSME authority years ago, and that authority is now in place, you and I knew then that skills were a very significant question as to why our SMEs and our young people are not moving forward. And today, every constituency has a technical training institute. Today, most counties have put a lot of effort on vocational training centers to ensure that our young people and the SMEs that they therefore work for have skills to do. Look, Charles, I invite you to Nyahururu to go and see Jogu, who is assembling tuk-tuks in Nyahururu, and buy one. Yeah? Competitive young people doing fantastic things. I invite you to Nyanyuki, where people are assembling motorcycles. So you can see for yourself that Kenya really is on the move. Do we have some challenges? I'm sure we do. But I think we should focus on where we are doing well and get on with it. Destination Laikipia, Sema Laikipia. Yeah?
I'm asking you to donate one.
Is Musea operational?
Is who?
Is Musea operational? MSC authority.
That's another.
Oh, I no longer work there. I am now governor of Laikipia. That's another debate for another day.
We need to wind up on it. We need to wind up on it unless you have a closing. But you refuse. I wanted just to get that particular confirmation about that national strategic grain reserve from you. You say
yes. I said we did. I got Felix Koske.
Yes.
And Aden Mohammed, ministers of the national government. I sat them together, two of them, and I told them we have a danger in this country. First of all, we are importing a lot of industrial alcohol. All the schools, all the industry processing, they are importing industrial alcohol from Asia. Now, we have a technology which I wanted to perform with UNES at the University of Nairobi, so that this technology can amass all the aflatoxin cereals into industrial alcohol and briquettes and glue. Then we have clean silos that we can now modernize them to global standards, because Kenyan silos are not global standards. So whenever you put cereals inside, the humidity levels increase very, very fast. So when you come back for the cereals, you find they are no longer cereals, but aflatoxin. So what we need to do is, first of all, to clear silos. Then number two, there is the way you treat the soil so that it doesn't impress aflatoxin. Number three is the way you make the silos to be able to close humidity levels outside and be able to keep our cereals well. Yeah.
I was laughing because, in the 10th Parliament, it used to be my responsibility to keep answering that question before the Agriculture Committee. and on this show and many other places. So I'm glad it is your turn now to, to deal with the issue.